welcome, Faithful Politics listeners and viewers. Josh unfortunately can't be with us this week. He just learned out that the Earth is flat, and he's dealing with that new reality. But he should be back with us next week. But instead, we have another conservative here with us this week. One Mr. Joe Walsh, who is a former congressman, conservative talk radio host, former social worker, and former 2020 Republican presidential candidate. He also is the host of a podcast called, let me see if I get this right, F asterisk CK Silence Podcast. And I gotta ask, like, what's the asterisk stand for?
I shouldn't have put it in there, but I tried to clean up my language a little bit. It's called F silence. F as in Frank.
Got it. Well, thank you, Joe, for spending some time with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sure
It's great to be with you.
Yeah, you're a pretty busy man, and I follow your tweets religiously because they always seem to crack me up.
I'm an idiot on Twitter,
and I just think it's really awesome. So but I want to start first by just saying I really appreciate like the individual and the person that you are, and so I'm kind of a lifelong Democrat. I've always kind of voted left for the most part. And I didn't actually really start following who you were until it was probably sometime before you announced your candidacy for president. But I just really appreciated just seeing you out there making an appeal to the American people. And you were on a bit of I hate to call it like an apology tour, but you were basically kind of on an apology tour, like saying, hey, like I did a bunch of stuff and I'm not proud of it. And
I helped bring us Trump.
yeah. And I, as a man that has made plenty of mistakes in my own time, I know it takes a lot to just, feel remorseful and to kind of sink this level of redemption and what have you. And I'm curious of like what was the breaking point kind of for you? Like, what was the thing that sort of told you, okay, like I need to kind of make amends for things I've done? Like, what was that for you?
It's a great question. I think really it was Trump. I mean, look, I went to Congress 10 years ago. I was the angry young man. I went there to declare war on both parties. And generally, I always fought for the things I believed in. But you know how this works. There were plenty of times where when I was fighting, I said stupid shit and I said mean stuff or I tweeted mean stuff. I got caught up in the fight. And I didn't realize really until Trump came on the scene, like how I did go overboard on a number of occasions because I like watched and listened to this guy every day. And I said, oh my God, were there times I sounded like him? So Trump kind of scared me serious, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does. But more so than just Trump. I mean, like, what was there a point where you could kind of see the cause and effect of the things that you would say, things you would do, and how it kind of impacted, both your community, your party, and just your world?
Yeah, it was again in the timing wise, it was all kind of Trump related because I noticed that all the people who supported me and followed me all those years, and they loved the stuff I said, they got caught up in what Trump said, and they like became really cultish. And when he said mean stuff or cruel stuff or lied, it didn't bother them. And it got me thinking, is that the way they treated me over the years? Like, of all the things that I said, did they let me get away with saying stupid stuff? And so I began to do a real self evaluation of me.
Yeah.
And it just occurred to me over time that the country's really divided. And even though I went to Washington to do what I thought was a lot of good, man, I helped divide us, and we're in a scary place right now. And it just convinced me to change, not my beliefs generally, but to change my tone.
Wow. Yeah. And so what do you think, I guess, is attractive about Trump and Trumpism? I mean, like, I hear a lot from a lot of my conservative friends. He speaks his mind, which may or may not always be a good thing, and like he stands for the worker, and like I've heard it all. I'm sure you have too. So I'm curious, like what was it that attracted you to Trump?
And me and my history. So when Trump got elected, when he was running in 16, I'm on Fox News all the time, and I'm on the radio all over the country. And the people who voted for Trump were the same people who listened to me and the same people who voted for me. And even though, like, I voted for Trump, I didn't love him. In fact, he blocked me on Twitter during that 2016 campaign because I would criticize him when I thought he did something bad or wrong. But here's what got Trump elected. The Republican Party is mostly older white people, older white guys and older white gals. And their America has been changing way too quickly for them. And the Republican, they had fears and concerns and angers about these rapid changes, like America demographically is becoming browner and blacker, and the plant in town is leaving town, and you can't say Merry Christmas anymore, and there are like 60 different genders now. This is the stuff that I would hear over and over from these Republican voters. Now, the problem is the Republican Party just ignored them. Instead of educating them about tolerance and gender and all the rest, the party just ignored them. And then along came people like me who riled them up too much. And Donald Trump got elected because he was the first Republican who came along who said, I hear you. I'm going to build a wall. I'll make Mexico pay for it. I'll keep brown and black people out of here. Trump was the first Republican who said to these Republican voters, I hear your fears and concerns, and I'll do something about it. It was all lies. It was all bullshit. But he said, I hear you. And from that moment on, they clung to him, and they still do.
Yeah. It does seem like he was like the Republican whisperer, like he
Yeah.
he knew what the deepest, darkest thoughts that a lot of people had, and maybe this is just sort of the neutral part of me saying that it's probably not all Republicans. There's a lot of Democrats that also were kind of fed up, and there's this big, I think, like walkaway movement,
Yeah.
from the Democrat Party, and a lot of the folks from there also like, hey, I'll pick up what he's putting down, because it speaks to me. So
Well, to your point, my friend, go back to 2016. The two most popular politicians in the country are Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. And truthfully, neither one is a Republican or a Democrat. Bernie's still not a Democrat, and
yeah.
Trump really wasn't anything. But you're right. There were a lot of Americans who felt like our political system is no longer listening to me. A lot of white people, a lot of working class people who just checked out and didn't even vote.
Yeah.
They came out for Bernie and Trump.
Hmm.
And it should have been a wake up call to both parties.
Yeah, I have a brother-in-law who who I don't think I'm gonna get in trouble by saying this because I don't think he listens to the podcast. But but I remember those back in 2016. I had asked him like, who are you gonna vote for? Clinton or Trump? And he was like, I think I'll just vote for Trump because I think it'd be a lot funner.
Yeah, there was a lot of that, and you're right. I mean, Hillary was the poster child for kind of an out of touch, boring politics
Yeah.
establishment. I mean, I got it, and I voted for Trump because he said he was going to drain the swamp and disrupt it.
Yeah.
It was all bullshit because
Yeah.
he's a total bullshitter. But I knew that our political system needed disruption. Disruption can be good or it can be bad. Turns out Trump's a horrible human being, but our politics did need disruption.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think Trump really kind of exposed, um, the the bad parts and brought out some good parts in a lot of like Americans. I mean, just like yourself. And I've got so my co-host Pastor Josh, he voted for Trump in the first election. He didn't in the second, and
He did
and
not.
no, he did not. No,
Yeah.
and he blames me because he's been hanging out with the liberal, So I'll count that as a win. but 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 he was conflicted. I mean, and a lot of my friends that I talked to, a lot of my Republican friends, were really really conflicted in 2020, trying to figure out like, like I've always voted Republican. Like I want to vote for Republican because of the social conservatism and this and that. And they somehow couldn't separate um, republicanism from Trump. Like the two were interlinked, and they just thought that Trump's a Republican, kind of in name only. Like he really is the ultimate rhino, right?
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and they couldn't separate it. And I know that for you, like you've said on a number of occasions, you kind of feel like you're a person without a party. Like is that still true?
Oh, I feel as politically homeless as you can feel. Yeah.
And is that because the Republican Party that you initially believed in, and even maybe some of the Tea Party elements to a degree are just no longer there?
So look, I've been a Republican most of my life, but I've always identified more as a libertarian slash conservative. When I ran for Congress, I called myself a Tea Party conservative first and a Republican second. Um, but the Republican Party now it's Trump's party, and that's not going to change. Trump slash Trumpism. I believe in freedom and tolerance and opportunity, free trade and free markets. That doesn't have a home in this party. So I don't have a future in the Republican Party. I respect the hell out of the Democrats. I really do. And it was an honor to work with Democrats last year to help defeat that horrible human being. But I'm not a Democrat. I mean, I don't fit with the Democratic Party. So until something new comes around, yeah, I'll be an independent.
Yeah. So it's so weird to hear you say that you appreciate the Democrat Party, because there are moments where I feel like, what are they doing? Like I have this theory. I have this theory that like Democrats are really good at messaging and pop culture, but they suck at politics. Like
Yes.
and like Republicans, I think, are horrible at messaging, but excel at the dark arts of politics. I mean, like when I think of like Mitch McConnell, I mean, he held a Supreme Court seat for like a year and still got Trump elected. you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like the Democrats can never pull anything like that off because, in my opinion, I just don't think they've got the cojones to do it. But
Well, you're right. And again, I don't say this as a Democrat, but I hope they demonstrate they have the cojones these next couple of years. But I will say, like, I respect AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar. They're not my politics, but they are true believers. They're progressives.
mhm.
But it's just dumb to say defund the police.
Yeah.
It's dumb to say what Rashida Tlaib said last week.
Mhm.
Okay, that's it. Let's just get rid of the police. Let's get rid of prisons.
Yeah.
You, that's not good.
Yeah, no, it's not. And I think I'm kind of in the same boat as you. Like, I mean, like I think AOC has a purpose. I appreciate her passion. I think she's masterful at social media and the heart she has for her own like community. Like I don't see that a lot sometimes with a lot of the Fox News like Congress people that don't even talk about their district once.
Right,
Like
right.
I voted for you, to represent my district, and why are you talking about XYZ that has no bearing on, like, I don't know how much gas is in my local gas station,
Yep, yep.
but I know, like, for you, like, so you used to represent, is it the 8th district in
The
Illinois?
8th district in Illinois, yeah.
Got it. And did you live there too?
Yes, and look, I taught American government and I taught American history. So when I got elected, it was really important to me to live in my district. And I didn't live in Washington, D.C. I slept on the floor of my office when I was there. I turned down my health care, all of my benefits, my pension. And I came home all the time and held town halls all the time because I really thought it was important, this idea of being a citizen legislator, like you're only there part time and you work for your constituents. That was really important to me.
Wow. Like, why did you get into politics in the first place?
Well, I've always been involved in policy.
Hmm.
Like I did do some social working. I've worked on education reform. I worked in the inner city on Chicago's South Side for a number of years. I've always been interested in policy. I've always privately loved politics. But then in like 2009 and 2010, like a lot of Republicans who got elected, I got pissed off. I got really angry about the debt, the notion that we were bankrupting future generations, which seems crazy at that time because I think our debt at that time was like only 11 trillion. Now it's
Yeah.
29. So
Yeah.
I ran for Congress because I was pissed off at both parties for just going on this spending binge. I didn't really have much of a prayer and I barely won.
Yeah, but you did beat, if I recall, it was a 3-term Democrat, right? Melissa
Yeah,
Bean.
Melissa
Yeah.
Bean.
Yeah. So I mean,
Um,
like, there must have been a groundswell of something, right?
well, there was. And I'd like to say I was a great candidate, but no, I wasn't. I rode what was then the Tea Party wave. And I know the Tea Party gets a bad rap, and there's some legitimacy to that. But I lived the Tea Party experience, and what got me elected was a bunch of Americans who felt like I did, angry at both parties for bankrupting their kids and their grandkids. And the woman I ran against, but a lot of Democrats at the time didn't seem to care about their concerns. So that anger really propelled me into office.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I remember the Tea Party, at least the way it was presented with a lot of the mainstream media, was, kind of presented more as a anti-Obama kind of like party than just, hey, we really care about fiscal conservatism. And I'm smarter now, or older, or whatever one you want to pick. But I talked to Amanda Carpenter on the show,
Yeah.
and she was sort of like, at there in the Tea Party movement when she worked with Ted Cruz, and she talked a lot about, like the values of Republicans today that don't sort of kiss the ring of Trump still believe in a lot of those things, still believe that we spend way too much money, and still have like these social, like values that we think are good for the family, for the whatever. So I totally feel you, and I'm curious on, like, what's the future of the Republican Party? Like, if they keep
Well,
on the same trajectory.
yeah. And to your last point, I'll make on the Tea Party, because some of what you say is true. Remember, the Tea Party, though, began even before Obama got elected. It began when George W. Bush was president and he started bailing out a bunch of big corporations and spending money.
Hmm.
I always saw two aspects to the Tea Party. One was the concern about the debt and the size of government. That's what I related to. But then there was a more populist element to the Tea Party. That's what Trump tapped into. Build the wall. populism, nationalism, anti-Obama, and there was some bigotry to that part of the Tea Party as well, but that was not the majority of it. Now, sadly, here's the problem. Because we went to Washington to do something about the debt and we didn't do anything about it, then the Tea Party people became disillusioned and they turned to Trump, who touched their, how shall we say, their more nationalist or populist tendencies. And that really dominated the Tea Party. And now that is the Republican Party.
Yeah, yeah. So if they keep on this trajectory, I mean, like
It's going to
10
die.
years, 20 years, from now, I mean, like are we just going to call the Republican Party the party of Q or something?
They're done. They're done. I don't think we get this yet. We are watching a political party, I think, die before our very eyes. The Republican Party is dying. It's on the trajectory it's on. I think it will be done pretty soon as a national political party. Look, it's a party of old white guys and old white women. Old white guys die and old white women die. And it's not replacing itself. Young people can't stand this party. People of color can't stand this party. So literally, the party is dying off. It's not replacing itself, and unless it dramatically changed, but I don't think it's going to change. So I think it will become a very strong regional rural party, but something's going to replace it nationally.
Yeah, that's interesting because it got me thinking where old people die. I don't think we're breaking news there, but
No,
but like the people that would replace it are the younger generation. So like when you've got the Matt Gates, the
yeah,
Marjorie Taylor Greens,
yeah,
the Lauren Boeberts,
Gobert, yeah.
like these are the up and comers, and I I don't know, I don't know, like what do you
There's
think?
no if hey my friend, if those are the up and comers, there's no up and coming. See, so that's it, and that's why if you can't get young people and the country is changing demographically and you can't attract people of color and they've lost the suburbs, then all you've got is old white men who live in the country and there just aren't enough of them. Uh, but right now, here's their dilemma, and this is why they're screwed because most of the country wants nothing to do with Trump and Trumpism, but the vast majority of Republicans worship him.
Hmm.
So as long as that's the case, Trump or somebody like Trump will dominate the party.
Hmm. Now, so like you've joined the ranks of some of the big name Republican Party stalwarts because of your views, like Adam Kinzinger, Miles Taylor, Sandy McCain, the Bush family, Liz
Yeah,
Cheney, and I'm wondering why don't you guys just start a new party or do something like that?
it uh, it it may happen. So right now, all of us who don't fit in this party, Kinzinger, Cheney, all go right down the line, all of us, and really we have no place in the party. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger can say whatever they want to say, but if they have a viable opponent next year, they're going to lose. There's no room in this party for them or me. So what options do we have? We either become Democrats, and by the way, some of the never Trumper Republicans are joining the Democratic Party. That's a very pragmatic decision. Try to move it to the middle. You can either do that, you can stay as an independent to try to do your thing, or you can start a new party. Starting a new party is very hard, but eventually, I think that's what we're going to be forced to have to do. I think it's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah, it seems like if a bunch of Republicans joined the Democrat Party, you would actually almost yield a greater power because of maybe the central, or the pull to the center. I mean, it's like Manchin. I mean, he owns the Senate at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
so
No,
so
it's a great point. And Bill Kristol, who I know you know,
mm-hmm,
that's his point.
mm-hmm,
Like I say to these to my friends and colleagues, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to start a new party. They say, no, we have a once in a lifetime opportunity to change the Democratic Party. Let's all conservatives join them. We can move them to the middle, and the Democratic Party can dominate politics for the next 20 to 30 years.
mm-hmm.
There's a
Wow.
lot of wisdom in that choice.
There really is, and this kind of leads me to my next question. I have a couple questions that I had some listeners send in to me. If it's okay,
Oh,
can I ask you a couple?
anything, nothing's off limits.
All right. So this question comes from Corgan, from Georgia, and he says, "So what are the most important key points of a platform that is a conservative alternative to Trumpism?" Uh,
Um, Freedom and tolerance. So free to live your life, do your thing, and generally government stays out of your hair, but tolerance for everybody else's freedom, tolerance for white, black, and brown America, tolerance for anybody, no matter your color, no matter your creed, no matter what country you come from, tolerance for anybody to come here legally. That should be what the party stands for. Trumpism stands for the exact opposite.
hmm. Yeah. Okay. Good response. So
Good question. Good question.
let's see. So the next question comes from Rochelle from Las Vegas. She's talking about your comment where you say, you've lost everything to stand up to Trump. And I think we've already kind of covered some of this, but she wanted to know, how does that affect your views going forward about the future of the GOP?
Well, here's what I know. And when I say I lost everything, I mean I lost everything. I can no longer run as a Republican. I lost all. I have no place in the conservative media world anymore. I lost my livelihood. I lost everything because I oppose Trump. Now, it doesn't matter. I'm no more brave than anybody else. But if you are a conservative right now and you stand up against Donald Trump, your career as a Republican and in the conservative media world is over. So I've lost all of that. What does that mean for the future of the GOP? It goes to what you and I are talking about. The GOP will continue to shrink because they're not replacing itself, because it's becoming an ugly, bigoted, nationalist party that now is open about white supremacy. That's not a majority movement in America.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that that vain attempt to have the American First Caucus was a
Oh my God.
very short lived, apparently.
Well, yeah, very short lived and not even necessary because the Republican Party is the American First Caucus.
Good point.
You don't
Touche.
need a special caucus.
Touche. Yeah. So this next question comes from a social worker named Sarah from Indiana. And she says, I saw social work and Joe's background and would be curious about his feelings towards recognizing social workers as first responders. They
Amen.
are employed by hospitals, law enforcement, CPS, etc., for most emergencies, including fatalities, but don't get included in first responder benefits, which became a sore spot during the pandemic.
It's wrong. They should be first responders just like any other first responder. There should be no difference between social workers and nurses and or teachers. That was a real big mistake.
Hmm. Yeah. So about your social work experience, like what was that a job that you entered into like after college or something?
Yeah, I moved back to Chicago. I got married young. I had a baby young. I needed to find work, and I lived in the city. And again, I've always been driven by helping people less fortunate than myself. So I went to work for an organization in Chicago that helped get low income Chicago teens, help train them for jobs, help them find jobs, and help prepare them for their GED. I did that kind of thing for a number of years.
Wow, that's really cool. Yeah, because I remember there was something there's an interview you did where you were basically trying to explain that you weren't a racist because of some stuff that that you said, and I remember reading it, but then also just being familiar with just what you've done in the social work area, and it's like it's hard to imagine somebody being racist as a social worker in Chicago. I
No,
mean,
God, no. But in their defense, people who have accused me of that, I've been two things. I've been very outspoken about a lot of issues. Second point, I love the issue of race. To me, I've always been um, really like obsessed with the issue of race. I want this country talking about race. And we do a really so because of that, over the years, I've really pushed the envelope on race. And sometimes I've gone too far, but I've tried to get people thinking about race because I think there's been a bad, dangerous thing going on. And I'll just speak for white people. White people are so afraid of being called a racist that most white people don't even want to talk about the issue. I'm not even going to give you my opinion on race. We got to move beyond that. And so I tend to push the envelope because I want people talking about race.
yeah, no, I'm with you. So Josh, Pastor Josh, um, him and I talk about race a lot, especially like with George Floyd and everything, which
Yeah.
we'll talk a little bit later. But his heritage, like he's a descendant from like Confederate soldiers. So sometimes like I'll poke fun at him,
Yeah.
about his heritage, like is that a hateful comment or a heritage comment, and I agree. I think that we really should talk more about race, and I think that on the flip side, being an African American myself, like I had to learn how to answer questions about race from people that are just kind of discovering maybe some micro racism
Yeah.
or what have you, because even Josh would ask me a question and I'm like, why is he asking me that, but then I just know it's hard and I know where it's coming from, and then I would tell him kind of what's on my heart, and just recently, like we were talking about something about race related, and I said something that you and your family will never understand is the fact that I have to explain to my kids that they may not be liked by certain people because of
Yeah.
the color of their skin.
Yeah.
Like that's a
Yeah.
conversation like white families just don't have,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and it's just a part of just growing up, and my parents had it with me and I'll have it with my kids, and they'll have it
Yep.
with their kids, and
Yep.
there is this sort of like thread that just goes through generations where you're told that, and then you see it unfold in real life and you're like, oh, that's why my dad told me that.
Yes. Yes.
So
And we white folk don't understand that.
yeah, but I appreciate all the work you're doing to at least educate yourself, educate your audience. I'm sure that there's a lot of people that don't want to hear it. They don't want to think that they're racist, or they deflect. Is you say Black Lives Matter, they say, well, what about blue lives? Like, okay, well, they matter too. But
Well, you're right. And this is so funny because I've said this before a bunch of times on TV. Um, if you and I were having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago and you said to me, "Hey, Joe, you big jerk, Black Lives Matter," right away I would have said, "No, all lives matter."
Mhm.
That would have been my answer, my response instantly 4 years ago. So I've spent the last few years doing a bunch of things, mainly listening to and speaking with Black men and women. And I got to the point a year and a half, 2 years ago where it clicked. I got it. I understand why it's so important. I understand what Black Lives Matter means.
Mm-hmm.
And really what you're saying is Black Lives Matter too. And I'm very pro cop, very pro cop. But even I know that as a white guy, cops don't treat Black lives like they treat white lives. That's just a fact. And we white people need to acknowledge that and then have a conversation about it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm with you too. I'm very pro cop. I got a lot of friends in the force, former military in the
Yep.
infantry. So a lot of people kind of that was just a natural transition for them. So I'm very sensitive when I see a lot of anti cop hate because it's one of those professions that it's a thankless profession, and not all cops are bad, but there are bad cops.
Yes. Yes.
And I think a lot of that is sort of evident just in the trial. So the
Nine
trial of
minutes and
Derek Chauvin.
29 seconds, man. It's all right there.
Yeah, and I don't know if you had a chance to catch in the closing arguments today. I caught more of the prosecution's closing arguments more so than the defense, but I've been following the trial, watching an C-SPAN when their feed actually works and doesn't break.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
but I'd love to kind of get your take on it. Like, what do you think about the trial? How do you think the jury's going to rule?
So I don't know how they'll rule. Um, I don't know what the verdict will be. I went into this trial and I've watched a lot of it because I've been interested like you. I had my own preconceived notion because I saw that damn video. And so I went into this trial convinced that Derek Chauvin killed George Floyd, plain and simple. At the end of the trial, I believe that 100 times more. So I know he killed him. And in fact, he tortured him to death. And what's interesting is because I'm so pro cop, that happened what, like May 25th last
Yep.
year, right?
Mm-hmm.
I speak to cops all the time privately. I've probably had 100 conversations in the last year with cops privately. Man, I've yet to have one cop tell me privately that what Derek Chauvin did was okay, defend what he did. None of them have. He should be convicted. It seems really overwhelming to me.
Yeah.
He should be convicted, don't you think?
Yeah, I do, and um, this is going to sound really bad, but I almost feel bad for him because I think that his lawyer probably, like, if he had the OJ lawyers, he'd probably be in a better position. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
but like that poor Nelson was up against like four state
yeah.
lawyers, and the dude couldn't even take a break. And I just thought that the arguments he was trying to make just I don't just weren't landing. I mean, he tried his best to kind of paint George Floyd as this, like,
Yeah.
I don't know, like super strong whatever person that was all hyped up on drugs, and that's the reason that Derek Chauvin did what he had to do. But just the evidence didn't seem like it matched that, based on the stuff I saw.
I think you're right, but I think also I think the defense attorney was in a tough spot because I just don't think he had much to work with. I mean, you and I have seen, and maybe I don't know. Did you see the video last week of the 13-year-old boy in Chicago who was shot?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
like you and I can watch that video,
Hmm.
and that's complicated. That's a tough, interesting call. What
It
that
is.
cop did. There was nothing complicated about what Derek Chauvin did.
Mm-mm.
I mean, there's like no middle ground. He sat on him for 9 minutes.
Hmm.
End of story. So I just don't think there was a defense. And I look, maybe we'll talk about it. Maxine Waters this weekend said something. Look, she probably shouldn't have said.
Yeah,
And by the way, that came up in the closing
yeah, it
arguments.
did. It did.
Crazy. So I worry about if there were an acquittal. I really worry about things. I got to believe he's going to be convicted.
Yeah, at least on two of the three charges. I
right?
mean, if he's acquitted on all three, I don't know what to say, but he has to at least be convicted on two. And to Maxine Waters' point, I mean, the fact that the judge thought that maybe her comment could possibly like help him in the appeals, I think that's a whole other Pandora's box. And I hope that if that does happen, that she's taking a good, close, hard look at herself in the mirror. And Nancy Pelosi will come out and say, yeah, no, you're off all these committees. How dare you?
Well,
Because, I
look,
mean,
and you're right. And look, again, what Maxine said was wrong,
hmm.
especially with a country on edge right now. She's a congresswoman. But look, all these Republicans who are pouncing on her after January 6th, after Donald Trump incited an insurrection against our own government,
Yeah.
screw you, you Republican cowards.
Yeah, I saw like so Kevin McCarthy came out saying, yeah, we've got you're like,
I served with McCarthy. He's a knucklehead. What a stupid thing to say after
yeah.
what Trump did.
Yeah, it's like where was this McCarthy, 6 months ago?
Yeah,
But yeah, that is kind of interesting that a lot of Republicans. I mean, maybe it's not interesting, maybe it's not surprising. I got this whole philosophy. I got these like 10 tips of like how to enjoy politics, and one of them is don't be surprised about hypocrisy.
yes,
Like
yes,
so
yeah.
maybe we should be surprised, but you know to to um to another point, I don't know if you caught this. This past weekend, there was a health and freedom. Um, I call it a Qvention, but it was like a convention with all these people.
I saw some of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean Michael Flynn, Lynn Wood, Sidney Powell. Kind of like the who's who and the Q crew kind of thing. And I'm curious on your thoughts about how did QAnon infiltrate the Republican Party?
But see, and here's the point. Like that stuff's not fringe anymore. This this is the Republican Party base. Uh, 10 years ago, when I'm in Congress, if remember, what was it like 2 or 3 months ago? Paul Gosar,
Hmm.
congressman from Arizona, he delivered the keynote address at a white supremacist rally.
Yeah.
What? A Republican congressman. And
Hmm.
3 months later, not one Republican has condemned him. I'm telling you, when I was there 10 years ago, if a Republican member keynoted a white supremacist rally, he's getting nailed and he's getting pulled off of committees.
Hmm.
In 10 years, what used to be crazy lunatic fringe is now mainstream Republican base voters. It's just, it's scary.
Yeah. Well, so one last question. Um, so not all conservatives, not all Republicans, I don't think necessarily subscribe to any faith. Like I'm one in particular. I'm thinking of like Rick Wilson. Like he practices in the dark arts. Of whatever. But I'm curious on what your stances are on faith. Like, are you a believer? Kind of what are your belief systems? With regards to spirituality and religion.
I'm a born and raised practicing Roman Catholic, still a practicing Roman Catholic. But I am a Catholic. I'm a Christian who's constantly questioning my faith and constantly exploring and searching for truth. I'm not a Christian who just obediently goes to church and doesn't question anything. I'm constantly wondering what it's all about. So I am a practicing Catholic. I'm a practicing Christian, but I'm a restless Christian, if that makes
I
sense.
like that. That's really good. Restless Christian. Yeah, the a lot of our audience makeup is actually kind of all over the place: atheists, believers, Democrats, Republican, and I'm always just kind of curious, like where people kind of stand in their faith and why they believe the things they believe. I mean, like I'm pretty upfront about my faith. I'm just like, yeah, like I believe that a guy who lived 2,000 years ago, rose from the dead. Like that's a hard thing to believe, but
What? Stop right there. Stop right there. I do too, and I'm constantly researching. Did it really happen? Did he really rise?
uh-huh.
But I'm with you. I believe it because if you don't believe that,
Mhm.
you're not a Christian. I mean,
Mhm.
right? That is
Yeah, yeah,
Christianity.
uh-huh.
But how amazing is it? I was thinking about that this past Lent, that a guy who lived 2,000 years ago, who really only had what, a 2 to 3 year
Yeah.
preachership,
Hmm.
changed the world.
Yeah.
And that's mind blowing.
It really is. Yeah. And and I think any believer of any denomination, but more so probably in kind of the Christian faith, I think if they're being honest with themselves, questions their faith on a routine basis. I mean, so I attend a Bible study with Pastor Josh, and like you're more than welcome to show up anytime if you like. but he'll ask us just questions like, hey, what do you think about like, Noah's Ark or about all these
Right.
other stuff? And I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I just have a hard time believing, that this thing happened,
Yeah.
like my mind is too kind of scientifically sort of like oriented, and, like I guess it could happen, but, I'm not necessarily putting all my chips on that particular like book in the
Oh,
Bible. Like if I'm being honest, like I don't know, fish swallowing a dude, maybe. I'll put that in the
um,
maybe category.
what the whole liar, lunatic, or Lord, man, he's got to be one of the three. And he wasn't a liar, and he wasn't a lunatic.
Mm-mm.
So,
No, I agree. So what's next for Joe Walsh?
um, it's in God's hands. I don't know. Here's the deal. Nobody's been on the weird, tough journey I've been on. So I've these last few years. So I've got a very unique voice. I'm trying to get this voice out there as much as I can. I have done a lot these last 12 years to help divide this country. I'm devoting the rest of my life to trying to figure out a way to bridge that divide.
Hmm.
I feel like I feel like the reformed gangbanger who got out of the gang, and now I want to get political gangs talking.
Wow, that's really awesome. Yeah, and I think that you have definitely done that, and even just coming in our program, just because again, like we have a lot of different listeners from all walks of life. There's a lot of our listeners that have never heard your voice,
Yeah,
or those that have heard it have have already sort of painted you with a variety of different brushes. you know
crazy racist Tea Party guy.
exactly, and I don't get that. I don't get the crazy racist Tea Party vibe from you. And my name is Will Wright. I'm a black guy for those listening to the podcast. Like, so I guess if I could leave with anything, I just want to encourage you and just thank you for just doing what you're doing, for the journey that you've been on and the journey that you kind of have set in front of you. And I just thank you for spending the time with me and coming on the show.
Hey, Will, it's an honor to be with you. I mean that. I don't say anything I don't believe. Tell Josh he's dead to me now. He's dead to me.
Will do.
Anytime, man. Anytime. If I can help anytime, happy to do it again. Thank you. It's been an honor.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. And yeah, thank you to our listeners. And we will see you next week. All right. Bye bye.